demonstrate a very simple project that anybody can do out of leather. For me, I'm just using scraps, but it can be done with basic stuff. I'll only use stuff that you can get at Hobby Lobby, and maybe one of you want to try it. Okay. This right here is just tooling leather. You can buy them in strips at Hobby Lobby in the leather section. It's really thin gauge stuff. I don't know if you can see that, but and I had an old Swiss Army knife, little knife. Size don't really matter, just as long as you have enough leather to cover the knife. Now, what I did is I cut a strip. Well, I actually had a strip, but you'd cut a strip if you wanted to. And I'm going to fold it over like this, leaving enough room on each side to where when I wet form it and pull it down, it will still have enough leather to work with. So now I'm going to wet form it. Pretty simple. I'm just going to do it this way for the video, but I would run it underwater. But with it being so thin, this should be good enough. Wet it really good, both sides. Of course, if you put it underwater, it would do that on its own. And then you let it start to dry a little. I'll use an old t-shirt to help it along. Usually wet it with warm water. So there it is. Now I let it dry a little bit to where it almost starts to turn back to its original color. You can speed that along with a hair dryer, which is probably what I'll do, but I won't be videoing it. Be right back. Alright, it's turning out tricky to be able to do everything one-handed. In my shop I have a little place where I can set this, my phone as a camera, but alright, I wet it and then I dried it with a hair dryer. It's still pretty wet, but not sloppy wet. And then you just start pushing it around. I'm going to use some little clamps, but I don't think they're from Hobby Lobby, but you can get them at Lowe's or whatever. But so it's all clamped up. Okay, now I have it in the clamps. I just used scrap leather on these edges because this tooling leather, you can nick it with your fingernails or whatever, and it'll the mark will stay forever because it's vegetable tanned. And so yeah, so there it is, nice and tight in there. Now we'll let it dry. I just set the hairdryer on the counter and let it dry. Let the hairdryer do the work. It took probably 10 minutes. You want it to kind of come back to its natural color, which is this. And it's pretty close enough to work it now. So now I'll take off all the clamps probably still be damp under the leather protector things. Which is good. It's still a little damp under there. Pick these off. Don't need them anymore. This is a little strap I cut. I'll show you what it's for. Further along. Now it's basically holding its own shape. Now, what I'm going to do is take a block of wood, set it on there, and then you can get this at Hobby Lobby. It's called a 4-prong chisel. And what I'll do is I'll punch holes for the stitching here, here, here. And when you punch them, you punch your first set of 4, and then you drop this end one into your last hole and punch the next 3, and just go until you run out. Make sure you don't go too close to the edge, or it will just make a cut in there and it won't hold the thread anyway. So I'll show you when I'm done with that. Alright, what I did is I punched the holes. And then after I punched them, I took this tool and ran, kind of bared down and ran here. And that will give me a spot to seat the thread. You can use this, but you can't get it at Hobby Lobby. What this will do is it'll cut a groove and then you punch the holes. Simple. So when I cut off the remainder with my knife, just eyeballed it with the other one, cut the tabs, and I took sandpaper and cleaned up these edges a little bit. They're not completely right yet. And I cut the top kind of round, and I punched the strap. I set it on there, making sure I had extra. That's one thing I screwed up before when I learned on my own, is I ran that strap tight. You can't slide the other strap through it, so make sure you have room to where you can run it through. Don't worry about these edges or the length of this yet. That don't matter. Now I'm going to put some dye on it. The dye I'll use is Phoebing's Dark Brown. You can get that at Hobby Lobby now. They started carrying it. They used to only have water-based, but they got the good stuff now. So I'll dye it and let it dry for a minute, and then I'll get to stitching on it. I don't worry about sealer till after I stitch. But the reason I dye it before is I don't want to dye the thread, which the thread is a wax thread. Here I'll probably use this white stuff, off-white. The sinew they sell at Hobby Lobby I don't like because it's really thin. I like this stuff. And it's not too high priced. You could skip the dyeing if you wanted to do it cheap and you like the color natural. You just got to be real careful when you're making it that you don't stain it up. Or you can even stain it with olive oil, which I have olive oil in there, but you have to wait a good couple days for it to dry if you do that. So, alright, show you in a minute. Yeah, there it is, all in its clamp. Again, because the dye wets the leather, I folded that over so that it will dry where it needs to be. And I was gonna put a grommet on here and make a keychain holder, but I don't really have any room, so I went ahead and cut another piece of strap that I'm going to fold here and sew it on, so I'll have a little loop for a key ring. On a larger knife you could do basically the same thing, like same strap idea as a belt loop, and just sew the bottom and sew the top. We'll go into that when we get that far. Okay, got it nice, fairly dry. Dry enough to work with, without getting dye all over myself, and so it'll keep its natural, or its unnatural shape, I guess. I'll remove these clamps. See where we're at. Kind of peel these off carefully. Try not to let it lose its shape. And that's why we use scrap, because those are all dyed now. Those are right in the trash. Okay. And you don't ever mess with these edges until you're done with your stitching, so you can get a perfect flush cut from top to bottom. And when you burnish the edges, it'll look good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch this, and the stitching is, I don't think I'll really show that. It's you just take you a piece of this and 2 needles, put a needle on each end, run it through the first hole, and then just go run it through the first hole, get your lengths to where they're even on top and bottom each side of the thread, and go through one hole with one needle and come back out through the same hole with the other needle. There's a way to knot it that's called saddle stitch, but for a little pocket knife keychain it doesn't really matter. I don't really worry about it, but I will glue these two before I start stitching. I'll just use another Hobby Lobby product. It's this EcoFlow leather weld. That's good enough for this. It's not quite as good as contact cement, I don't think, which I have some of that, but for this video I'm going to use that. And this is some of my other stuff, but you can't get it at Hobby Lobby, so I'm going to stick with the plan here. But before I stitch those, I'm going to put this loop on the back, because it will be a pain to try to get a needle through there without getting it hitting the other side. So I'm going to pull the knife, stitch the loop on, glue the sides, and then stitch them together, and then cut off the extra to where it looks even on both sides, and then burnish the edges. And burnishing can be done with anything, really. It's just heat. So you could take the handle of a tool and just run it over the edges. Hold the whatever you make project and just run it over the edge back and forth, and the heat, build up enough heat to polish the edges. You can use beeswax, which I have, but I don't really use it a lot. It's not really necessary. But yeah, just slightly dampen the edges and rub any old piece of wood or handle or something over it. And it'll bring those edges to a nice, clean, rounded off shine. You could even use a pencil if you wanted to. I mean, I wouldn't, but you could. Alright. Alright, now it's all stitched. Stitch the keychain on it. This is loose enough to slide. Now a lot of people would think, okay, good, that's almost done, just cut the edges off and call it good. Well, the edges are the most important thing. That's what makes it look custom. So I'm going to cut off both the edges, and then I'm going to burnish one edge and show you the difference. Okay, here it is. See that edge? That's burnished, and that's not. You can tell there's two pieces. The idea behind burnishing is to try to make two pieces turn into one almost, to where you can't tell. I mean, a lot of times it won't be perfect, but it's pretty close. So, burnishing is important. And the last step, sealing it. That's where everything comes together. I burnished this other edge. Looks a lot better. Yeah, and of course I put my M on there. I put an M on everything. I don't have a logo, just an M. I like it that way. It's my artistic side. You can use a wool dauber, or on this little thing I'm just using a throwaway paintbrush because it doesn't. It's the wool dauber for this feedings dye doesn't fit in the dang hole, so you actually wring out your wool dauber as you pull it out, which might conserve on dye. I don't know if they did that on sealer. I don't know if they did that on purpose, but I just find it a nuisance. I'm going to finish this up. I finished sealing it. It's not dry yet. But you can see the sheen just brings out all the color and everything. I know my lighting in here is horrific, but it is what it is. But I'll show you the finished product when it dries. Here it is. Sealer's dry. Not cured yet, but it's dry. And sometimes little things are fun to make. Most of the stuff I make is pretty big, but neat little keychain and hold a knife. Same principles you can do on a large scale or whatever. Do a big pocket knife, just like I said, do the same stitching here and here for a belt loop. A lot of people want to do rivets when they first start, and that's all fine and good, but custom is actually, people like stitching, it seems, more than they do rivets, and it'll keep your knife from getting scratched up, because if you riveted this back here and here, you have two places that could scratch your knife. But this will last forever. It's just a fun little project. Alright, thanks.